Okay, now that we've seen the normal flow of how a web page is displayed from top to bottom, from left to right, and now that we've seen how to usurp the order of normal flow, to actually take that back and do with it what you want, now we're going to get even more granular. What we're going to do in this video is take this container test.html. I have left the blank file just like you see it now on top of this video, so if you don't already have it, go grab a copy of it and open it in Brackets or Atom or whatever it is that you are using to do your editing. What we are going to do is produce a very, very simple web page here. We are going to use a wrapper, and that is going to be kind of our bottommost container. So if you think of these like Tupperware or like boxes that you're stacking one on top of another, so that you get a really tightly packaged but at the same time really efficient in using the entire space product, that's what we're going to do here. So, you know, think about opening a phone for the first time, think about opening a computer, think about opening just about anything. That box is as small as can be without allowing whatever is inside of it to be spilled out of that first container. So that's our wrapper. So what I have for us here is just a simple style section. And what I'm going to do is add the wrapper. You'll notice I've got .wrapper here. Hopefully it's spelled correctly. It is. Certainly we could use an ID instead of a class. This is a class, remember, because it's got the dot notation there. But instead we'll use the class. Again, it really doesn't matter. That part's up to you. The thing we want to control here is the width of the wrapper. And instead of pixels, we want to use 80%. So what this is going to do is force that wrapper to use 80% of the page. But remember, normal flow says the wrapper is going to start all the way over on the left-hand side. So that's actually something we want to prevent here. What we want to do is have the wrapper take up the middle portion of our screen. And the easiest way to do that is here with the margin auto. And that's all we really have to do for wrapper. I don't need a color for the background. I don't need anything else. I'm going to let the other containers that I want inside of wrapper to do the work for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and create generic containers. I'm going to call it container 1. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and paste it 2 more times. So I'm going to have a container 2 and a container 3 as soon as I change 2 and container 3. Now, this is where I want to start adding some of the style here. So the selectors I'm going to want are width, height, and margin. So we want a width here. We don't want our first container to take up the whole width. As a matter of fact, let's have it be considerably smaller than container 2. So we're going to go with a 30% width. Now, if I just had a width, I'm not going to fix that. It doesn't matter, but I did hit the caps lock. If we just have a width, what we're actually going to find is these containers won't display because they have no height. There's no second dimension to them. Now, to make this easy on us, I'm just going to go ahead and say 400 pixels. We're actually going to go and fix this a little bit later on when we look more at responsive design, but for the time being, 400 pixels is really just fine. Now, to make sure that I can see what's going on here, I'm going to get it a background color. We'll stick with aqua because it's towards the top here. So that's container 2. Container 3, we want another width. This time, let's go for 70%. So what we're going to see here is with a width of 70%, on container 2 and a width of 30% on container 1, what we'll do is we'll take up 100%, so the whole of the width of wrapper, and we'll see that in just a second. Now, to make sure that everything looks the same and nice and pretty, I am going to give container 2 a height of 400 pixels. This way, it's exactly as tall as container 1, and the top and bottom of both containers are going to line up in a way that looks good on a page. So nothing drastically different here. The only difference we're doing between anything that you'll have seen previously is we are mixing percents, so our relative sizing, and pixels, our absolute sizing, just to get a quick and dirty page here. Nothing drastic, just enough to get this functional. Now, we want to be able to see this again. So instead of aqua, let's find another blue. How about cadet blue? And that's good enough. Container 3, what I want is I want container 3 to be 100% of the width. And I want this one to be actually underneath container 1 and container 2. So the first one, perfect timing. So the first one there is going to be container 1 on the left. The second one is going to be container 2 on the right. And the third one is going to be container 2 on the bottom. But we have a little bit more work here to go. Let's give it a background color just so that we can see this one again. Let's give it horrible coral. And that'll be good enough. I do need to give it a height because, again, if I don't give it a height, let's give it 200 pixels. So it's going to be a little shorter than the other ones. As a matter of fact, it's going to be half as tall as the other ones. If I don't give it a height, there's no 2 dimensions there on the 2-dimensional space to take. So it's going to be 100% of the width, but it will have no height, and therefore it won't be visible. Now, if I come over here into body and simply go ahead and put in, the div class equals, and we'll put container 1 in here. That's the one we want first. So there we go. The next one we're going to want is container 2. And the third one we want is container 3. Oops, we need the div. Just like so. Now, if we were to view this, what I'll tell you is we are not quite there yet. We still haven't given it exactly the granular control we want over everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and do our live preview. We're going to give it some time to show up. And what we'll notice is nothing, right? That's because we haven't really told everybody how to behave. Now, the first thing we need to do here is make everything float. By making things float, what we're going to do is tell these various objects not to stack on top of one another, but to actually cause the flow of the page to go around them. So I want container 1 on the left. I want container 2 on the right. And that'll get us some of the way there. It's not going to get us all of the way there. We still have container 3 to worry about. Container 3 we don't want on the same, that same vertical, or that's the same horizontal space as containers 1 and 2. So this one we need to have an overflow property. So in chapter 7 we can see overflow in the very beginning of the chapter with the yellow lady slipper images. What you'll notice is what we want is a nice logical visual spacing so that the paragraph and the title and the image don't all overlap one another. We want everything to push the boundaries of all that white space. We need everything to take up all of that available space. So here our overflow we just want as auto. It actually works pretty easily this way. What that's going to do is force the page to think about where container 3 should go, and container 3 should go on the bottom, as it is, of container 1 and 2, because it's overflowing from what we see there. So I'm going to save the page, and I can already see when I come back over here to my page, boom, I now have my 3 container blocks. Container 1 is over here on the left-hand side. That's right here. And this is 400 pixels tall, and it is 30% of the width. This container 2 is also 400 pixels tall, but is 70% of the width. Not for, to scare away all of our non-math majors. 30% plus 70% equals 100% of the width. So this is taking up everything that Wrapper is giving us to offer. Down here, we have container 3. So this one's 3. You'll notice it's shorter because we said it was 200 pixels tall. And instead of sharing the width with anything else, this one here is 100% of the width. So in so doing, what we can do is create as many different container classes as we would like. If I come back in here to brackets, here we go, and I was to copy this, so copy this block of code. For me, it's lines 41 through 43. Depending on how much white space you have where, it may not be. And if I was to simply repeat this and go back and check, you'll notice 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 as we move our way down. Is this particularly great design? No, because there's no real reason for any of these things to be here. But there is something, excuse me, to notice. Because all of these containers, this container, so containers 1 and 2, it's just going a little slowly. It's too much to ask some days. Here we go. This is a container, this is a container, this is a container, here and here and here. We used a class definition for those instead of an ID. So that means I can reuse it time and time and time again. And that's going to give me all of the flexibility I need to be able to repeat elements. So if I'm repeating elements and I go to something like The Verge, I can see I've got a container class over here on the left and a smaller container on the right. The next line down, I have a small container on the left and a large container on the right. It's just container 1, container 2, and then container 2, container 1. So all they're doing is taking the containers they've already built. Here's 1, here's 2, with their different percent widths, and here to change it up a little bit, they've simply gone 2 and then 1. Repeating this idea of user-created content areas, repeating them to create a regularized order that you can implicate on your page. This really goes a long way towards making these websites look and feel not 2000 modern, not 1997 modern, but really right up to the minute of modern, good web design.